to take any shot at me that you want. You don't, you shouldn't have to lean into the mic, but
Okay.
I tend to over project like a motherfucker, and I don't dig it. So just go ahead and speak real quick.
This is me talking, and this is how I'll talk. Do you need me to
Awesome.
talk louder?
Nope.
Okay.
Go ahead, say it again.
This is me talking, and this is how that'll be.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome. Oh my God, it's actually gonna work like this. I'm with Daneya Esgar here at the podcast. She has been mentioned plenty of times. Your name has come up with Jerry Carter, Carl Grutt, Jeff Grinstead. Like we've had your name being brought up because essentially you're the face that we know for activism in Pueblo, Colorado.
Wow.
Well, you don't have to say wow. I mean, the involvement of activism that you've had within this city has not only you haven't been a bandwagon fan about it, you've been leading the wagon. What type of activism have you been doing that you could speak of?
Oh, Lord. Um, Most recently, there's been a lot of work around police accountability.
Mm-hmm.
There's been work around healthcare, accessibility to healthcare for everyone. And
I'm so glad you're here for.
I'm not here to preach like
Yeah,
Obamacare is the answer because I know
yeah,
it's not, but at the same time, it's opening some doors.
and it's better than what we have.
Exactly. It's better than what the status quo has
Yeah,
been
yeah.
for 100 years in this country. I've done a lot of LGBT activism, a lot of immigration activism. Um,
Immigration as well.
uh-huh.
That's you talk about three big points in just one sentence in Pueblo.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm sure that there are a litany of people that have something to say about the Pueblo Police Department.
Right.
I just recently found out that I'm A in the LGBTQA acronym.
You are.
And then immigration. That's something that is probably right around the corner to be really fucking hot in Pueblo's topics pretty soon.
It should be.
Yeah. What is there discrimination going on presently? Is it just the system that we have in Pueblo is broken? Is it what do we
It's the
have?
national system that's broken,
Okay.
and a lot of times, unfortunately, I'm not going to sit here and say that Pueblo is horrible.
Hmm.
It's obviously not perfect because there are still people living in the shadows. There are still people who can't necessarily come out and be exactly who they are. They
Hmm.
have to watch everything they do.
Hmm.
We're lucky that we have a sheriff that is understanding of the issues around immigration reform and isn't necessarily the quickest to sick people to arrest them just because he has suspicions and then calling ICE. He's actually
Like
pretty.
the Phoenix sheriff.
Yes,
Gotcha.
exactly. He's actually pretty understanding. He abides by the law. I'm not saying he breaks any laws by any
Hmm.
means, but he's also not um, quick to judge if someone is or isn't here legally. Um, but yeah, so Pueblo isn't horrible, but our national system is completely broken.
Do we have any type of programs in place, I guess, if someone didn't have immigration status, that they would be able to start that road without risk? Because in the paper recently, in the past week, we have two Vietnam veterans that have
Hmm.
been
That have
gonna get shipped out back to Mexico,
that have served our country.
and that's a little outrageous, isn't it?
I agree
Shouldn't
completely.
there be some sort of like common sense amendment to the
There
Constitution?
should be a lot of common sense um, answers to the broken immigration
That's a
reform.
better, yeah.
And just recently, the United States Senate, passed a bipartisan bill that talks about making a clear pathway to citizenship for people that are already here.
Hmm.
And it's of course getting bogged down in the House, and Boehner's already said he's pretty much going to kill it, and not even talk about it, not come up with anything when the Senate has proposed something that both sides agree on and said this is a start.
Hmm.
They're just shooting it out of the water, so we're going to go another year without any answers or any fixed systems.
And this is probably just a stalling maneuver because I mean I don't like to argue Democrat and Republican
Mm-hmm.
too much. I do like to argue liberal and conservative though,
I
because if
agree.
you look throughout the history of the United States, the liberals have been on the positive side of every type of civil movement. Now if that title of liberal at the time was Republican, as in
Mm-hmm.
when it was slavery, or if it was in Democrat, as in when it was in women's right to vote, the liberal cause. In Pueblo right now, there seems to be outside of I I have no idea what happened in the recall election. That's still kind of like weird to me, I guess. But there still seems to be a bit of a current, I guess, for the liberal movement in Pueblo to be paving a way.
I agree. I think, growing up in Pueblo my entire life, it's always been known as a blue town,
Hmm.
left leaning, but I think in the past, really 5 years, 5 to 10 years, I agree with you. There's been this wave
Hmm.
of people kind of pulling to the left, and I really think the recall doesn't reflect that. And I think part of the issue with the recall is people didn't get out and vote. It was a very small number of people that voted. If you were completely passionate about the reason they wanted to recall the senator,
Mm.
you made sure you went and voted. If you weren't that passionate about the issue, you really weren't paying much attention and it didn't affect you, so why do you need to go vote? Was a lot of the attitude I got back from people.
Do you feel that maybe it's just a common apathy to guns, though? I mean,
Right.
we tried to come up with some bit of an answer,
Hmm.
which didn't take away anyone's weapons. It
Exactly.
limited the ammunition. Now, regardless of advertising from each side of who you should vote for, uh, it, people are still getting shot on a daily basis, and the numbers aren't just two people anymore.
No.
It's four people, five people.
Hmm.
We have no general consensus of this.
I agree.
Do you think Pueblo has some type of consensus that we could wrangle around?
I don't, and I think that's part of the issue with the recall. Even though they're not a lot of people turned out to vote, the intensity of dialogue between people during the entire time leading up to the recall. I mean, people were downright nasty with each other if you didn't agree. It was people on
It
one
was
side or
bad.
the other.
It's bad.
Yeah, and people go back and forth. I mean, I shoot guns.
Hmm.
My partner's dad takes us out shooting all the time every time we go visit them. And I never wanted to touch a gun before. He taught me everything I needed to know about it. I go and I shoot clay pigeons.
Hmm.
I still can't shoot anything living. Um,
But you're educated.
but I'm educated about it. And even he is a staunch Republican from a rural town who has guns.
Mm.
He agreed with the laws that were passed.
Mm.
It was that message that got twisted around
Of
that
tying in.
these people were going to come take your guns and they're going to infringe on your Second Amendment rights, and none of these laws that were passed did any of that.
Now, Pueblo got this little spotlight and this
Hmm.
huge influx of money
Uh-huh.
from both the left and the right.
Hmm.
The Koch brothers or the Koch brothers, however you say it,
Koch brothers.
whatever.
You're
Uh,
saying it the way it's spelled.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like they have like their money was definitely seen in Pueblo,
Hmm.
Colorado. But then you have Bloomberg's money as well
Hmm.
that was seen in Pueblo, Colorado.
Hmm.
Are we just that simple? Like, are we as Pueblo just that simple to where the Pueblo chieftain that's always been a red type of right-leaning media coverage, are we as Pueblo that simple just to follow the money? Because I feel like that because of a blue-collar background, we have a little bit more of a common sense base.
I don't think the Pueblo is simple at all, and I don't think that we are simple because we took the money. I think people can see that we're like a testing ground. We're kind
Yeah.
of the guinea pig of the country,
Hmm.
especially Colorado itself is when it comes to gun laws.
Of course.
We were the first to kind of push through and do this on a state level, but Bloomberg and his friends really want to do on a national level.
Hmm.
And because we passed it, that was one thing. And then when they started looking at this idea to recall some of these senators, keep in mind Angela Herron did not sponsor any of the bills that were passed. She voted just like every other
Of
senator that
course.
voted for this, but why was she singled out? It's because they're trying to make an example of Pueblo. They were trying to be threatening. They dumped in all the money they could. They found some everyday blue collar guys, the
To wear the
plumbers,
face. Yeah.
to be the face as much as they want to say that they did this. We all
Hmm.
know the truth.
Hmm.
They weren't the only ones doing it. And then the whole right side wanted to make an example and scare people. There was videos actually of them talking about how if we can do this in a Democratic town and we can recall their Democratic senator, people are going to be too scared across the nation to pass these gun laws. So we were actually targeted because we were a blue city.
Now, why isn't information like this put out to Pueblo, Colorado?
It's a great question.
It is a great question, isn't it?
That's
We
it's a
have a
great
very
question.
limited form of alternative media
I
here.
agree.
Yeah.
It's very, very frustrating and annoying.
Do you see? I guess I know the Republican side would see that as a big W, that's a
Hmm.
big W.
Hmm.
Do you think that they have any type of momentum going into another election?
The election that just happened. Look at the election that just happened on November 5th.
Okay, the
There was
tax issues.
there was tax issues, but then there was also Republicans running for office. The only Republican who held an office
Uh-huh.
or even got reelected was a sitting city council person.
And who is that?
That was Chris Kaufman. All of the rest were all Democrats. So that's why I think we're all kind of waiting to see what happened at this election because there was
Mm.
a lot of Republicans, even though city council is not partisan. Um, you know who the Republicans and the Democrats are when they're running, and we were all kind of waiting to see how this small municipal election turned out, and the Dems turned out. The
Yeah.
Dems turned out in numbers.
I don't want to say conspiracy theories. Like, there's a
Sure.
lot of especially within the, I guess you say, my little comedy world that I'm trying to live in here. Like, we all as comedians basically kind of agree that there's a lot of conspiracy about government in total. However, a lot of people don't like to apply that on a local level, I guess. Is there any reason for us to apply that on a local level?
I'm not sure it's necessarily a conspiracy because since growing up here, I've always heard about the Good Old Boy Network of
Yeah,
Pueblo.
right. Yeah, that's
So I
very
don't even
true.
think it's much of a conspiracy here. I mean, um, there's definitely a list of people who are going to do stuff. And if you're not already on the bench, your chances of being elected, your chances of doing anything are
It's
kind of,
that well planned already.
I believe so.
Yeah, I don't doubt
I
it.
don't
I
agree
mean,
with it,
there's
and I'm not saying it should be that way, but the more I've kind of stepped back and looked into Pueblo politics, I do believe that. And I believe that there are groups of people who bring their collective power together to push
now
people
that
up.
that statement right there, I can agree with
Right.
because I don't want to say I've worked within circles of power in Pueblo, but I've been a fly on the wall when
Mm-hmm.
circles of power are talking in Pueblo.
Mm-hmm.
And you can easily see how money of Pueblo corresponds with each other.
Mm-hmm.
You see Union Avenue getting turned from its antique stores and home fashion now to we have a gym,
Mm-hmm.
which means that Buffalo Exchange is next, which means that whatever American Apparel,
Mm-hmm.
which means that Pueblo is slowly slipping away.
I agree.
Are these the people making those decisions?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. And if it's not necessarily elected officials, it's
Oh no, 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 they don't
it's
have to be. They're
people.
think tanks.
Exactly, they're
Yeah.
think tanks, and and I'm not going to deny that there's not think tanks on the left side
Well,
as
there has to
well.
be.
There exactly, there
There
has
has
to
to
be
be.
because people are starting to realize that it can't be one person. That even somebody who gets elected to an office, say, there's at least 10 people behind them that have been helping that person figure out exactly what their messaging is, what's going on, what we need to push for. You know, the days of one person running for an office and making a difference are long gone.
So we had this though, like champion Leroy Garcia though, like last time, right? Right? Isn't that what it was? Like he's supposed to be this military man,
Hmm.
like he is the community guy. Cleanup. Is it just come down to the face? I mean, is that all it really comes down to, even on our level? Do we have a chance? Is there a chance, I guess, with our activism to actually make a change within office, or do we just say we can make more changes on this side of the?
the the hopeful person in me who really believes in government wants to believe that someday the activism side of us is really going to be able to change what the elected offices look like.
Mhm.
And I think we can do that. I was just part of a program, it's a national program called Emerge, and it's for Democratic women who want to run for an office someday.
Awesome.
Colorado just had our first inaugural class. I was a part of it, and it was 16 women, all from all over Colorado, and they train you how to run for an office and how to win. The idea behind it is that someday you will run and you will win,
Of course.
and we're in the process of recruiting for the next class anyway. Um, but there's things not just Emerge, but there's other organizations like that are really pushing to get more progressive people elected and in office. And I do believe that that is one way. But in the meantime, until we could take over a majority, we still have to work on the ground and we still have to work in the grassroots efforts and we have to do the everyday activism that we do on the grassroots level. So I don't think it's an either or. I think
Yeah.
it's a both and.
It's they both need to exist for
We
it
have
to.
to keep pushing and building people up and teaching people what running for an elected office and what serving in an elected office means
Well,
too.
history would suggest that um, something is going to happen again.
Hmm.
I mean, history, if we don't look back at it, of course they say we're doomed to fail or whatever, repeat it. Uh, it's been 40 years since riots, and that was on a different nature. And now the LGBT community, LGBTQA community,
Hmm.
is getting such a powerful voice
Hmm.
uh, that they should no longer be considered a minority. They should no longer be considered uh, 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 how just civil union and not marriage is beyond. Like that's just a slap, really, is all it
It
is.
completely is.
I mean, that's still a demeaning a type of.
I agree. And I have a hard time with civil unions. I was very excited that it passed. I helped organize the event where we had Pueblo couples come together and get their civil unions. And people kept asking me why I don't have one.
Mm,
And I am luckily in a relationship where I don't need all of the protections yet.
of course,
We've got family that understand that she's my partner. Something happens to me, she is to be by my side. Nobody is to stand in the way of that. And they're understanding of that. But there are families in this town and in this state who don't have that,
of course,
have
yeah,
that
absolutely.
privilege. So a civil union, although I agree completely, it is absolutely not marriage and it is a slap in the face, was a necessity in the meantime until we can
Stopgap.
exactly. It was something in the meantime to help give these couples some protections until we can undo a constitutional amendment, which takes a lot of work and a lot of time.
Okay, so just to run through a little activism now, I
Sure.
guess the LGBTQA you've been a huge part of. Uh, your story of how you got to the L is quite a journey.
It is
Uh,
definitely.
I would hastily defend your story to anyone that questioned it, I guess. So if there's people out there to believe like you're not born the way you are,
Hmm.
or if you just think the environment is the product, I can simply point to one person and say, because of this person's story, uh, I know that this is who they are, and this is
Hmm.
who they've always been.
Hmm.
That would be your story.
Yeah.
You started out with guys.
No, here's the thing. I knew in first grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I in first grade I had the hugest, that's not a word, but I had the biggest crush on my first grade friend, and I just remember thinking like I just wanted to spend so much time with her all the time, and she would be talking about boys and who we thought were cute, and I just kind of didn't get it, and I didn't know as a first grader I'm a lesbian. I didn't
Yeah.
know that, but I just knew that I always wanted to be around her. And it was like late in my middle school years. Family issues were going on, and my dad left. And it was from that moment on I decided that I wanted to do everything possible to get my dad's attention.
Okay.
And that's when I hit high school and really realized, holy shit, I'm gay.
Yeah.
And not that my dad ever told me being gay was wrong, but that's certainly not something you think of when you're trying to be the perfect
Of course.
person to get your parents'
Of
attention.
course. Especially in high school.
Exactly.
You need to go to prom. You need to go to
Exactly.
homecoming. Yeah.
Shoved it all in the back of my head so far and so hard, along with all the other emotional issues I had as a teenager, to the point where it was in denial. And it wasn't denying it to other people because nobody questioned it, but it was denying it to myself, believing that it was just something. It was just a phase in my head that I really didn't. I wasn't really that way, and it was something I can overcome. I just needed to find the right guy,
Yeah.
and I spent
A lot of time with
a
some.
lot of time trying to find the right guy. And don't get me wrong, I've loved men. I've never been in love with a man the way I have been in love with my partner.
That,
It's
that's an amazing. That's how you learn though. Like
exactly.
I've talked to gay men that have a near similar story. Like
Mhm.
they were with girls in high school,
Mhm.
but then by the time they were 18, it was just this is who I am.
Exactly.
Uh,
I was in my late 20s or my mid 20s. I was a late bloomer.
you've been through some horrible relationships
I
though.
have been.
Yeah, like you've been like I don't want to say I've got a friend that was one of those dudes, but like us dudes in our 20s don't know what the fuck's going on. We really don't. We're kind of douchebags. Well, we're a lot of douchebags. But you powered through all of that,
Mhm.
and you were able to see all of that, and now you were able to personify all of that as someone. that is important to this community? What is being done, I guess, for little first grade girls that don't have that option?
I can't speak to the grade school level, but one of the things that I really pushed hard for through the Southern Colorado Quality Alliance to start up again was our youth group.
Hmm.
The youth group is open to kids 13 to 20 years old
Okay.
who even have an inkling. And it's even for allies too. If you have a
Hmm.
friend who's gay and you're not really sure how to
Get
be a good
information.
ally,
Yeah.
it's open to them as well. And I think it's something that's been growing. And the cool part about the youth group is we have about 30 kids that come now every week. And through that, they're taking that back to their schools, and they're starting what they call gay straight alliances, which is basically a student org group like any other club,
Hmm.
um, where they have gay and straight kids come together and just build these alliances to eliminate bullying, to
Huge issue right now as well.
exactly, and to make people's sexuality a non-issue,
I agree with that.
because it really is a non-issue. And I get uncomfortable sometimes when people are like, "Oh, you're the gay champion of Pueblo," and I'm just like, "Yeah, I do a lot of
Uh,
activism on the LGBT community, and
yeah,
it is a huge part of who I am. But who I love is one sliver
yeah.
of who I am."
Comfortable in sexuality is an interesting statement. I've, for a very long time, the biggest, like, stigma I've escaped, and I don't want
Mhm.
to make it sound like it's derogatory, is that I'm gay.
Mhm.
So I've had friends that when I walk to a party, they would not want the girls knowing who I was, and they're like, "Who's that?" The girls would ask, and they would point and say, "That's Wade. He's gay." And it
Wow.
kind of stuck with me for a long
Right.
time. And it made it to the point where I'm so comfortable in my sexuality, I don't really give a shit. Like I'm comfortable hugging gay men.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable with gay men touching me.
Mhm.
I don't really care because I know that these are people,
Exactly.
and that's it was an important lesson, but one I don't think I could have learned in Pueblo.
No,
One I at the time anyway, when both you and I
I
were
agree.
growing up.
I agree.
It's good to see. I went to the thing in the park. Your guys is
Our
that was
pride event.
yeah, that
Mhm.
was a great little event that you guys had on.
Yeah.
Uh, Moving on to the third leg, I guess, of your activism. And a lot of people here should pay up. You deal with the police, and you're trying to get a police board or a community review board, basically, for the police.
Right. The idea, and it spawned from back when I worked with the Colorado Progressive Coalition. It spawned out of some of our members having horrible experiences with the Pueblo Police Department, and then really talking to more people, especially on the east side,
Uh,
the west side, and Bessemer, who deal with this on a daily basis.
mhm.
And we came together and started this great community conversation. I mean, the first meeting we had, over 75 people showed up.
Really,
Yeah.
in Pueblo.
In Pueblo,
Wow,
at the library, we had over 75, no, I want to say closer to 80 people show up
that's still a big number.
for Pueblo
Yes.
to come on a weeknight to meet and talk about the police. They came together, and the biggest thing that came out of that was people really do believe that there's not enough accountability right now. And it's
Mm,
not necessarily against police officers. Police officers are working people doing their job.
of course.
The issues we have is a systemic breakdown within the Pueblo Police Department, and we don't know if that's necessarily the chief's issue or if it's lack of oversight from the city manager, who
Okay.
is the chief's boss, and the city council is the city manager's
Hmm.
boss. So there's some kind of systemic breakdown where we have horrible response times, we have police officers not doing the job adequately, they're not getting the right training. So there has to be some accountability measure somewhere. And we're tired of the chief saying, we're taking care of it internally. No, that's a broken system.
I agree.
You never patrol within yourself.
When the residents of your town are on
Right.
a manhunt looking for the wrong dude,
Right.
there's an issue there.
Exactly. Exactly. So the big thing that came out of this meeting, this community meeting, was people really do want a citizens police review board. And there's so many different models out there, and there's so many different things that we have to look at. There's actually a smaller work group that came out of that group now that are really digging in and researching and trying to find the right model to present to city council.
Hmm.
And in the meantime, we have our Human Relations Commission here in Pueblo that claims that they take care of that, and they really don't. They are funded by the city as well.
How many people are on this board?
I don't know the exact number. I want to say 8 to 10. There
Okay.
might be more. but they're funded by the city. So once again, that's somebody funded by the city
It's within
looking
the
after
same,
the
yeah,
city.
it's within the same,
That's been our biggest issue, and we
yeah.
really don't feel like, they've done a lot of work. They've done some mediation in small ways, with individuals and individual police officers for small crimes. But we're talking a bigger scale here.
It's not on the street level. So
Right.
when we say police dissatisfaction and review board, I mean it's not that this street scale isn't readily available to talk about and discuss. It's we need to get to where the issue is, and
Exactly.
it isn't on the street. It's in the office.
Hmm.
And in this office, they only care to look over themselves.
Exactly.
So essentially, that's, and I don't want to compare it to this, but that's the banks saying, give us all of the money and don't tell us how to spend it. Just know that everything's going to be okay.
Well, another small group that came out of this community group was, we keep hearing the police say we need more funding, we need more funding, we need more funding.
Every day.
And the reality that we've looked at is they don't necessarily need more funding. They need to.
Efficiently distribute their funding.
Exactly. And we pulled the county sheriff's budget and we pulled the Pueblo police budget. And the county budget is exactly outlined. Like, you can look at it, you know exactly where every penny is going. The Pueblo police budget is not that way.
Leaves a lot of room for interpretation.
Exactly, exactly. So if we have a hard time believing that the city, who's already broke, needs to come up with more money to give them when our police chief makes over 100 grand, lives in Colorado Springs, drives
Well,
a
he
Pueblo.
lives in Springs?
Oh yeah, our
Oh my
police
God,
chief,
sorry.
Chief Velez, lives in Colorado Springs, drives in not even a fuel efficient car, an SUV that is Pueblo's SUV that we pay
35
for him to
miles every
drive
day.
back and forth every day. You can't tell me that we can't look at how to reallocate some funding within the department to get more officers on the ground, to get more training for these officers that they have been asking for.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And that's so a lot of my job and my career was to go in and audit. Like you
Mhm.
go into this restaurant, you audit this restaurant, you show them where the holes are at, and
Mhm.
then you have to have the big fist to stand by your convictions and ensure this.
Right.
Do we have that fist to ensure this? Or are we that fist?
I believe we're that fist.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the community is finally coming together instead of just saying, "Oh, that's public police for you." They're actually coming up and saying, "No, the public police should not be like this. We need to fix things." And again, I have a hard time talking about this because I really know some great police
I was just going to say
officers.
the same thing. I have
Yeah,
been privy to some great cops,
exactly.
but I have also been I I witnessed one of the worst things I've ever think I've seen police do to an individual, and I wasn't going to say anything about it until when it came out in the paper 2 days later that they were going to try and prosecute this young man for 20 years in jail and $500,000.
Wow.
And that's when I was like, this, and the story that was in the newspaper
Wasn't
wasn't what went
accurate?
down.
No.
And I was the only reliable witness. I had to talk to the FBI, I had to talk to the CBI, I had to talk about, I had to talk to the NAACP,
Mhm.
and that's one thing that I can thankfully say, at least in my experience, my great experiences with the Pueblo Police Department and all the clubs I worked at.
Mhm.
I've never really seen the racism card played so much.
Mhm.
Not to say that it's not existent, uh, but I've never really seen it played. It was in this instant that there could have been a choice to, but I didn't see it in that moment.
Mhm.
Uh, do you think that there's a problem like that in the Pueblo Police Department?
Problem of racial profiling?
Correct.
I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Towards Brown.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
See all you motherfuckers that doubted me? I'm brown, assholes. When I call you white, there's a reason.
I mean, just
I
I hate to
agree.
keep pointing back at the East Side, but the East Side is treated so unfairly.
Well, I mean, of course, if they only have a limited amount of funds, where they send the police officers are going to be to the rich areas. They're not going to be patrolling the east side. And that's why
Exactly.
the crime continues.
Yeah, and that's bullshit
I agree with you.
because they have the funds. They have to figure out how to redistribute it so that the police officers that are on staff at that time are not overworked, are not having
Which
a
they are.
list.
Which they
They
are.
do. They have a list of 12 calls to get to. I get that. You have to prioritize which one's the more immediate, but at the same time, you can't tell me that there's not preference given at one point or another to University Park, to El Camino, to La Vista Hills versus Bessemer, the east side, the west
It
side.
has to be. I mean, it
Exactly.
has to be. Because if it isn't, hey, I know through the businesses that I was in Union Avenue,
Mm-hmm.
there were very prevalent people on Union Avenue outside of me. And when these prevalent people would talk to the police department, I would then get spoken to.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. You can't tell me that these prevalent people that live in these prevalent areas
Mm-hmm.
aren't going to get
Mm-hmm.
definite priority over someone that isn't in Bessemer on the east side.
Exactly. And, not even just in neighborhoods. I do believe racial profiling exists in all law enforcement.
Hmm.
Um, just think about
New York stop and frisk law, shit like that.
exactly. But I mean, even and if people don't believe that it happens in Pueblo, but look around. How many
Mm.
times when you see a car pulled over, is it a single white man or a white woman who's
Mm.
pulled over?
Buffy McFadden.
Right. But normally it's a car full of brown men.
I agree with you, and that is what you see.
Hmm.
And there was a discussion that Feely and I had a
Hmm.
little bit with Rosted Jeff about lack of male role models in this town.
Hmm.
You think that's a problem here?
I just don't know if I can really speak to that. I think that there are some great men in this town. I know a handful of them very well that I consider close friends of mine.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as being role models, I don't really know outside of their small circles if they're
Of course, I see what
they're
you're
they're
saying.
not people of prominence, I
Okay,
guess.
yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't know if there's a lot of great role models in Pueblo in general, men or women.
Well, and I agree with you on that aspect, but we talk about an LGBT community that has these great facets now, like your youth group for
Hmm.
kids to come and communicate to. Uh, there's obviously a problem with young men walking into buildings with guns in this
Yes.
country.
Yes.
Uh, and and as someone who is a former like champion of the video game realm, I can say that that's probably got just at least some small part to do with that.
Hmm.
And we could say it all goes back to the parenting, but when we look at Pueblo, Colorado, we do fit a stigmatism. We do have the most single mothers.
Hmm.
We do like, which means there's a lot of bad dads out there, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean decisions aren't made on both ends. Through that, though, we have like zero outlets for young men.
I agree with that.
Zero outlets, and even for young women, like the outlets for young women, like we don't have the strength of a support group that I see.
Unless you're involved in sports, and if you're not involved in sports, then you're an outcast.
Ain't it?
And I'm sorry, not everybody wants to play a sport.
I agree with you.
And even in sports, sometimes there's corruption.
Obviously,
So I
obviously.
agree with you. I think that's a
South High
big
School.
issue.
South High School, you have to go to a basketball camp in New Mexico
Yeah.
to even make the team, or
I
at least
worked
that's how it was back in the
I
day.
worked with high school students for 4 years
Hmm.
as a counselor, and that was my biggest issue. Is there was never anything for these kids that are looking for something to get connected to. I would encourage them all I could. You need to go see what clubs are available at
Yeah,
school, and they just kind of look at you like
yeah.
if there's not people at home pushing them to get involved. They don't know why they should.
So moving on, I
Okay.
guess I would like, since you are someone under the LGBT curtain,
Uh huh.
you are someone under the immigration curtain, you are someone, and I don't mean this as like labels or anything like that. Uh, I'm a comedian, the comedian base,
Hmm.
and we tend to say some awful shit sometimes.
Yeah.
What advice can you give comedians? Because, in my opinion, the intelligence that people should have to understand the context of a joke should outweigh what you think it is through your opinion. Not you personally,
No,
but a
no.
person's.
This is hard for me because I really do chalk it up, and I think I've even told you this before. I just think I don't have the right humor,
I understand.
and
It's okay.
I do honestly believe that working so closely to the issues that I've been working on for years and working closely with people who have been oppressed
Mm-hmm.
for so long for so many different reasons that I don't, I have a horrible sense of humor. I can't laugh at these things, and it instantly pisses me off.
Mm.
And I've had people tell me it's just a joke. It's just a joke. So I don't know if I have the right answer.
But
I'm
this
trying
is
to figure
you're
out
the
that balance.
exact person that should be answering this question now, because let's face it, if I'm a person that's of public influence and I say something wrong, you're the one that's going to be coming after me.
Right. I think something that I would just like people to think about, and I love jokes. I just don't love jokes that are at the expense of someone. If they've done something, have fun with it.
Hmm.
If they've actually done something, but if it's just a person, a person's character, a person, something that they were born with, nothing that they have chosen,
Hmm.
things like that, that's where I have an issue.
So they say that we are uh like in comedians, like we're supposed to take a painful situation
Hmm.
and make it funny,
Hmm.
because essentially that's our human reaction to
Right.
painful situations. Through that, being born with a painful situation, being born into stigma. You have comedians like Lenny Bruce that go to jail for attacking the Catholic Church. Is it not our, and that was decades ago, but is it not our duty, I guess, as comedians then to challenge your opinion on that?
Sure.
Yeah.
And this, I agree with taking the painful situation and changing it, but that's either got to be your situation that you're
Hmm.
talking about, or it has to be somebody who you've talked to and they understand and you can tell their story
What about if
that way.
if it's a generalization of the community? So I mean, like, if I want to make one of my jokes is, uh, I have a pretty hard time convincing the world I'm not gay. Like, I really do, and I wish I was sometimes, because if I was, I would be in Vegas sipping Mai Tais and eating fucking tartar. But I have to let some dude turn my balloon knot into a tube sock, and I'm not into that. And see, you giggle at that, but that's not specifically at someone. That's a joke that's made of the gay community in that aspect, and that's about uh,
But that's not degrading.
no. And you did say something very intelligent to me, because I did ask your opinion on a gay joke one time. You said, "Listen, don't stigmatize gay men trying to go out and get straight men, because
Exactly.
that is hurtful,
That is
that is
hurtful.
painful."
That's where
So
a lot of the homophobia comes from.
that gray area,
That gray area. People think that if they're around a gay person, and not everybody thinks this, obviously, this is people that really have homophobia,
of course,
which is an excuse sometimes in my head.
it is. Yeah, yeah.
But I think that that's part of it, and that's one of my things when we were talking about the particular joke. I just didn't want to make it seem like that, you know, LGBT people always get the stigma that we're predators.
Hmm.
You talk about being around kids, you talk
Yeah.
about, even being around straight men, straight
Gay by
women.
osmosis, or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
That we're gonna come get you. We're sexual predators. We're gonna change you, and we're gonna morph you. And those are the issues I have. And that's when you and I were talking. I
Yeah.
appreciated
Yeah.
that conversation
Yeah.
because that's out there so much. And I really do believe it's starting to change at least across the United States. That image is starting to change, thankfully. But it's been a long road, and to have
And there's still a lot of work if only 15 states are.
exactly, exactly. If only, and all it takes is one comedy show for that room full of people to laugh at it and have that one person who's struggling with their sexuality sitting
Mm,
in the room hearing that
to take it.
to take him, put him a step right back closer to the closet.
So I guess this is a great segue then into to bullying. We have
Hmm.
one aspect where we have NFL players, and we discussed this on our last podcast as a group of men. We sort of went over the last times we were bullied.
Hmm.
However, the bullying that you speak about, I want to say within the LGBT community, coming from straight to gay, that's got to be, I
The bullying within the community
well,
on
I'm
each
sure
other.
there's bullying within the community,
Hmm.
because through Jerry we learned that some gays and lesbians don't like transgender. Some transgender don't like gay and lesbian.
Hmm.
Uh,
Some gay men don't like lesbians.
yeah, in my ignorance, I never would have assumed that, you
Right.
know. However, bullying from straight to gay has it been or will it be an issue in Pueblo, Colorado?
It has been an issue.
Yeah.
I remember in high school, a friend of mine was very outwardly gay. Everybody knew he was gay, and he never hid it. It was never a secret. And I don't remember what the initial argument was, but there was some kind of argument with some boys from Beulah who were ranchers.
Oh,
And so I'm not trying to stereotype them at all, but they were very much brought up
of
conservative
course.
on the farm, that type of a thing. And the argument got so heated, and I believe it was over the meat industry or something like that. He came out to his car, and there was a dead calf on his car, and in blood, the word fag written all over his
Get the
window.
fuck out of
I
here.
swear to God, it happened at South High School.
Really?
Yeah.
Man. I only know two gay men that would have been openly public at South High School at that time. So
Hmm.
I'm guessing I think I might know
Hmm.
who one is.
And so that was
That's a
huge.
little dramatic.
Exactly.
And that's something that you would assume that you see in Idaho and not in Pueblo.
Exactly. You know, and people, luckily, this guy remains to this day one of the strongest people I know, but he literally was more upset about the cow than he was about anything.
That makes sense.
He didn't get bullied a lot because he didn't allow himself to be bullied. But I also believe that's what pushed him to be more assertive as well, is because he had to make sure he put up this front.
Mm,
I mean, it helped that he was very tall. It helped that he was pretty muscular. Like, people didn't want to fuck with him. But fast forward to now, I mean, there's stories, these kids that come to youth group that tell me sometimes, a lot of them will tell me there's no issues with bullying. And I think that they just want to believe that they live in this
bubble.
great world.
Yeah.
But then they will start to tell me little stories here and there, and I just like stop them, and I'm like, you don't think that that was somebody trying to bully you? And their eyes light up. I'm like, oh my God, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. They were
Yeah.
trying to push me down, and not physically, but they were
Of
trying to
course.
push me
Of
down and
course.
hold me back and silence me. And there's a lot more of that type of bullying, I think, when it comes to the LGBT community in Pueblo, thankfully, more than the violent bullying. And
Mm,
I'm saying that I'm not trying to sit here and say that that doesn't exist,
of course.
but a lot more of it is mental
Of course.
bullying versus physical bullying.
Yeah. Uh, Sometimes I look at Pueblo when I'm just out and about,
Hmm.
and I think to myself, Pueblo is a prime place for the next kid to snap. Like it's just we could be the next place on the news almost perfectly.
Hmm.
We have a lot of sexual repression in this city,
Hmm.
and I'm talking about through like 20-year-olds. We have a lot of sexual confusion in this city.
Hmm.
Uh, are we prepared as Pueblo if something like that happens? You think?
I really have no idea. When you said that, I literally got chills
Right?
because it makes sense, and it is scary. It's very scary. It's sorry. You got me all nervous
It's
now.
all good. Like I'm not trying to like put you on the spot or
I don't know
anything.
if we're prepared for that or not. I know there's a lot of people that care about the youth of this community,
Mm,
but there's also a lot more that don't.
yeah,
And that's what really scares me.
yeah.
We've got the scales aren't balanced, and it, take for example the Amendment 66 that would have given tax money to schools. I don't know how many times I heard people say, "Well, I don't have kids. Why should I care?"
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And it's just that thought process that I don't have kids. Why should I
Of
care?
course, the mentality.
And
Yeah.
we have to stop thinking that way, because as much as we want to live in our own world and live in the present moment, and I'm all about that, is this next generation is going to be taking care and picking up the pieces that we're trying to pick up the pieces of our parents. We're trying to make things better.
Mm.
They're going to have to be doing that for us. And don't you want to at least give them a foot in the door? Don't you want to at least make sure that they're ready to take care of us? I know I do, and
Yeah.
it just drives me crazy, the mentality that people have that because they don't have kids or their kids are already at school or anything like that, that it doesn't affect them and it has nothing to do with them anymore.
Selfish mentality.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I don't want to sit here and call everybody selfish, but they just need to open their eyes that it's the next generation. It's not just about
Well, like even
us.
even within that, like we talk about selfishness, and I don't want to say Obamacare or anything like that. We have had problems as a country for a long time,
Hmm.
obviously. We were blinded by those problems through the 90s and the better part of the early part of the 2000s, with great money and big
Yep.
cars and houses. And reality is basically set in now for us. Pueblo seems to be a great spot that is this jewel. Like we have discussed so much of the bad. Like we've
Right.
discussed where immigration we can improve, where police we can improve, where LGBT community has had yes people a dead's fucking goddamn Godfather moment on their car.
Hmm.
Through all of our transgressions, however, Pueblo seems to me to be a jewel.
I
It
agree
seems to me
100%.
to 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 not only display fortitude against the rest of the state who really are pussies about moving shit along. They really are. Like
Hmm.
we're weed, great. They wanted it, let's give it to them. Like fantastic. Like it's not our choice. We're gonna tax them for it. They're gonna fucking pay for our schools. Fantastic.
Right.
Uh, the culture of Pueblo, Colorado,
Hmm.
is amazing.
I agree.
What do you love about this culture? Where do you see it going?
I It was funny because this question came up when I was actually being interviewed for the city
Oh
council
yeah.
vacancy, and they asked me what my favorite thing about Pueblo was. And I know it sounds corny, but we've talked a lot about people and their issues, but when it comes down to it, honestly, I love Pueblo's people,
Mm.
and I do believe that that has to do with the cultures, that has to do with the awesome people. I mean, if you think about it, the conversations I have on a daily basis with just random people are phenomenal. People are so interesting in Pueblo and they're so open, I believe, to meeting new people and, just recently starting to work at a bar again, seeing people interact with each other and the genuine love I feel that this city gives off. And people may argue that with me, but I truly, truly believe that there's so many great relationships that have been made in Pueblo that love kind of shows outward.
I agree with you on that, and not also. I also agree with that. Pueblo gives you tools to succeed outside of
Hmm.
Pueblo.
Hmm.
There are many instances where not living in the state of Colorado or just being out and abroad, you're not really taken aback by a lot of things. You're not really shocked by a lot of things
Right.
being from Pueblo. You are naive to a lot of the world, don't get me wrong. But you're better prepared because Pueblo it wasn't so polarized with money, I
I
guess, or
agree.
at least I didn't see it that way.
I agree.
And you are right now. Like when I did the bars back in the day, no one gave a shit about anyone.
Hmm.
There was zero cent. No one gave a fuck about a band. No one gave a fuck about
Right.
like an art. No, like but it is now. Pueblo has evolved in such a short time to
Hmm.
where this love in this community is starting to exude.
I think people really like each other in this community, and I really do feel like the art, all the art that's bringing up, is is a part of that. I believe even the comedy that's happening is a part of that. The music scene was huge when I was younger, and then it fizzled out, and I do believe that that's
I
coming
agree with
back.
you.
People are just feeling, and I think part of that love that we're talking about is probably more of a sense of community. People are finally starting to feel like they are together. People, I remember growing up saying that you were from Pueblo, you would like say it under your breath. And
You should,
now when I walk
yeah,
in a room, I absolutely say when I'm in a room in Denver that I am from
yeah,
Pueblo.
same
And
here.
I say it with conviction, I say it with authority, and I say it with love. And I think that the tide is finally starting to shift, that our generation, a lot of people who have gone and come back,
Hmm.
not all of us stayed here like I have. Anyway, but they come back and they've come back for a reason, and they feel reconnected and they feel energized. And say what you want about Pueblo, but there is this sense of community, and I think that is based off of the friendships that we've all made.
I completely agree with you. I really do. I see people that have left and have come back, and they are bringing the skills
Right.
back with them
Right.
instead of essentially staying in LA or staying in New York or staying in Jackson or
Hmm.
wherever they go. They're coming back to Pueblo to give back to it a little bit.
Exactly.
How do we give back more now? Or how do we focus our attention to the right place to where it needs to be given? Because
I
I love giving back to the community. I love doing what I'm doing. But even within that, uh, we have these issues that we've talked about.
hmm
Uh, are we just sitting here bullshitting? I
no,
mean,
I
and I know you're not, but I mean, like, are these other people that maybe live, like, are we gonna bullshit this, or is there something that we can do?
I think what you have to do first of all is open your eyes and open your heart. Find out what you're passionate about. Because if you just say I'll get involved, and you go show up to one rally. That's awesome that you showed up to that one rally, but that's if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to go to the next thing, and you're not going to learn how to speak out about it, and you're not going to learn to talk to people about it. But if there's something that you care about, even a shred, look more into it, get involved, and find your passion for that, whatever it is. There's so many issues and so many things that people can work on, and you'll be shocked. Like, it sounds like a time suck, but you give it as much time as you can, and you'll find how much it gives back to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's an easy step that people can do. People always say they don't have time, and I know that, and I know what it's like to be busy. But if you really want to see change, and you really want to make Pueblo the city that we all know we deserve it to be, and it deserves to
I
be,
agree.
you find something that you're passionate about that you want to work on and change. Whether it's art, whether it's fighting for the LGBT community, whether it's fighting against the corrupt police department, anything like that. You find your passion, and I guarantee you there is somebody that can connect you and get you involved and help you.
Where can people go to get a hold of Daneya Esgar if they want to find out about these, to get involved with the immigration, to get involved with the police, to get involved with LGBT?
Um, the easiest would probably just to be emailing me,
Yeah,
and if I can't if I don't know how to directly get you involved, I know someone that's working on something. That's one of the great things about the city as well, is the networking.
absolutely.
If I don't know the answer, I know 5 people I can call to get you the answer, and I think a lot of people can say that.
Awesome.
So my email address is dlesgar, esgar, at gmail.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Daneya Esgar, for coming and doing this.
Thank
A
you.
long talk. That was like